Hello and welcome to another episode of the Molten Truth. I am your host Zoey Michaels, and we have another returning guest this season. You guys had Doug with us a few episodes ago, and now we've got Jennifer coming back. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. How has life been treating you?
It's good. It's been busy. It's been a crazy busy year, but 2026 is a new year, so I'm hoping things are going to be calming down, but in a good way.
Well, absolutely. So we were talking just a teeny bit before the show, just trying to kind of catch up where we were, and you had mentioned because last time when you and I spoke, you were going to be working on book 5, and I was fully expecting, okay, this is book 5 we're talking about, but no, we had a
I threw
curveball
you for a
here.
loop. Yeah. I'm still working on my 5th book in my series. But growing as an author, it was recommended to me because I switched editors as well. So my first 3 books were edited by somebody else. And then I switched to a different editor for book 4, and they did such an amazing job. I thought, I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to add chapters and materials and do a fresh edit on my first book because I've grown as an author and I've learned so much about my writing. I'm a lot more confident now. And there's chapters and voices for characters that I didn't feel that they had their chance to speak. They didn't get their spotlight, so to speak. So I've added their chapters and I've expanded on some concepts and such. And I'm going to be relaunching my first book.
That is amazing. And I have to say, just personally, I'm inspired by that. I just took off in actually publishing any of my work this last year. And
Nice.
the idea of, going back and rewriting, adding chapters had not even occurred to me, that would be
Mm-hmm.
something that I might want to do in the future. But hearing you talk about that
And I
makes
mean,
me
if I'm
think,
going,
wow,
yeah. And I mean, if you're going
maybe in
through
a
all
few
that
years I
process,
might do
I'm
that.
also, yeah, exactly, right? I mean, you grow as an author and then you're like, oh man, I wish I'd put this in or I wish I'd put that in. And, it's not that I'm not going to do this again, but, it's just, I felt like there were characters that really needed to have their voice. And if I'm going through all of that effort, I'm going to get a new fancy cover made. And this I've been doing well with my book signings and stuff in Canada through Indigo and Chapters, that they would like me to put my books up on so that they can order them across Canada. So if I'm going to go through all that with new ISBN numbers, new edits, new materials, new covers, and then I'm just going to edit. I'm not going to do a relaunch, but I'm going to edit my other 2 books with this same author because there's same editor because they're doing such a good job, and they will get fancy new covers too, but they won't be a relaunch.
Yeah. And when you say that, it makes sense. There was this book series I wrote. You probably have heard of Confessions of a Shopaholic. I mean, most people know the
Yes.
movie for sure.
Yeah.
Sophie Kinsella, the writer of that, I had gone through and had actually started listening to her books at one point, and I had been confused back then, like why this we have 2 different versions of this book, but probably she had the similar experience to you where she wrote that first book, put it out there, and it was a great book, but she was like, I bet you I could do that better. I'm imagining that's probably how that all went down. Um,
Yes.
and yeah, so I can see that.
Hmm.
It's funny to hear you say that because I'd never consciously thought about it until you brought this up today.
And I have heard of other authors doing that, just it's not because I've made a mistake, because the story is still good. I've just expanded and clarified it.
Yeah,
But once my relaunch happens, it'll go out as a second edition. There, my first edition will no longer be available.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that makes sense too. It also explains why
Hmm.
people have second, third editions and so on. But
Yes.
yeah, that's a fascinating concept, and it kind of gives me hope that if I'm not super happy when I go back and look at something, or where I feel like I've grown to a certain point, it's nice
Yeah.
to know that that's a possibility. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. So remind me, because the only thing I specifically remember about your books is that your protagonist is male, which is, usually we tend to write the gender that we are, but you chose to do a
Yes.
different voice where that was concerned. remind me what your books are about.
So my books are a magic fantasy adventure. There's lots of action. There's some supernatural suspense elements. It's about acceptance and finding out where you belong. So there's our world, our time, coexisting magical realm, but they're separated by a veil. And we can't see across, so we don't have magic. But these creatures from this realm that do can cross into our world, and they have done so in the past and been inspired our fairy tales and mythologies. And then my protagonist is a young man born with the ability to use magic. His name is Callum Walker, and because he has magic, he's able to cross this veil, or rather, he's dragged across this veil. And, so he's learning about this world and all the beings therein. Adventures ensue, but he's trying to figure out, where he belongs, because he is too magical for our side, but he's too human for this magical realm. So he has to figure out where he belongs. At the same time, he's got to, master his abilities to survive and just basically accept who he is.
Interesting. The creative side of me wants to say, does he create a third realm? Because that would be really cool.
I'm not going to give away anything for future books. You'll have to read and figure it out as we go. I know where the series is going to end, but I'm set on a number between 6 and 9. I'm working on my 5th. I've plotted for my 6th, and it's just a matter of how many books it's going to take to get to the end. But I'm aiming for between 6 and 9.
That's cool. So when you are plotting this out, because this is the interesting thing, because I've been doing it with on my side, trying to figure out a series I want to write. I tend to do an outline, and like, I know I want the last book to be about this. So are you thinking ahead that way? Like, this is where I want the story to end, and this is what book 1 is going to be about, and then maybe book 5 is going to be about this? Or how do you do that? Is it more art, or is it more science?
It's more imagination. I have a general idea of the big events that need to happen, like the big motivating things in each story. And I used to be a pantser. I used to, just let my imagination flow. I knew where to start, where to end, and somewhere in the middle that needed to shift it. But as I've gotten better, gotten deeper into my series, there's events that I need to put in there. I still leave open spots for my imagination to run wild, but I do tend to plan it out a little bit more in each story, that until I get to that plotting stage, I know the big events that need to happen in those stories, and then the rest can be fillers. And then I find connections that I don't even know. I was like, oh, wow, I've set that up in book 6, and that was in book 1. And I'm like, I didn't even think about that. Because I'm in depth, so deep into my story. It's all in my head.
I wonder about that too, because you might think about doing something several books later, and then I wonder, okay, how do you account for that missing gap at that previous time? And I suppose you would just write it into the current book, but it's nice when you actually have a link already.
Yeah, and I haven't come into it where I'm missing gaps. I mean, there's new information that he learns because he's learning about this entire world that's coexisted for, alongside of us and kind of evolved. They've been existing as far back as humans have been alive. But there's a lot of things that he doesn't understand. So he's learning, and then I'm always able to connect it to something, so that there's that connection that fits. I don't know whether that's subconscious or if I'm, planting it on purpose. Sometimes I am, but a lot of times I'm just like, oh, that fits neatly into this section here. And it's just accidental inspiration.
I like that. And really, I guess that makes sense, because as we live our lives, we don't know everything that happened before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're not aware of conversations that happened without us, or this or that somehow connects with our lives. We don't know it until we do know it. So I suppose from a book writing standpoint, that makes sense too.
Yes.
It's an interesting thing to think about.
The hardest part for me with my books is, so we have the common magic, I had to develop this like dark magic theory. And I kind of had this concept in my head as I was writing it through. It started in book 1. We saw hints of it in book 2. It became it wasn't until book 4 when I actually sat down and I had a character explain what dark magic actually was. But I realized that I had planted the seeds all along, and I knew this. I just hadn't written it down.
Now, you and I, when we first spoke, talked a lot about kind of how your life and elements of your life kind of were inspiration for this, and how much you learned about yourself by certain things that were revealed about, I think, one of your children or both of your children
Both,
being
yeah.
diagnosed with autism. Um,
Yep.
so how much of that plays into the books that you write, or how much of that is inspiration for what you write?
I, it was pointed out to me that because I also have autism and ADHD, and I was diagnosed after my sons were diagnosed, but I had a reader point out to me when I was explaining how, you know, my character's trying to find a sense of belonging, but they're too human for here, too magic for here. So where do they belong? They need to figure it out. They need to master their abilities. They need to survive. And somebody said, well, that's kind of like your journey through life with autism, trying to figure out where you fit into everything and just sort of survive the chaos of society. And so I think my big arc is written by me. There's a couple of characters that have some, you know, like tendencies of mine. Like, for example, my there's a character in there who's very, he doesn't take jokes. He doesn't understand a lot of the magical creatures. They don't understand human humor. Say that 10 times fast. And that is a lot of me because I have a hard time understanding jokes. I can tell a joke, I can give sarcasm, but to try to understand it, I have a difficult time putting myself into their shoes and seeing it from their perspective.
Well, and I remember you talking about, let's see if I can remember, because you would study people, like almost like you were on another planet and you were studying people to understand them, so you knew how to you react the way that
Yeah,
was
I wrote my
expected
own
of you.
script. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I spent years watching people because I didn't know how to talk to people. I wanted to talk. I wanted to have friends just like every other kid does, but I didn't know how to approach that. I didn't, you know, it was simple when you're little because you just go up to somebody, a kid in the park, it's like, "Hey, my name is such and such. Do you want to play? Let's be friends." You know, and it's so easy. But when you get to teenager or you get to, you know, like get a little older, it becomes a lot more complicated. And so I would watch people and I would write, you know, like, okay, so and so said this. This was the answer. Oh, there was a smile. I must say this. This must be what I need to say when somebody says that. And so I wrote my own script, sorry.
No, it's okay. Almost like a programming language. You were trying to program into yourself.
Yeah.
These are the predefined responses to these situations.
Yes.
Now,
Because I not many people understand with autism is that it's not that you can't learn, like social communication was a big thing for me, being able to communicate effectively and stuff. But even though I have autism, it's not that I can't learn how to do that. It's just that those things that would come naturally to other people do not come naturally to me. I have to actively learn them. And so I actively taught myself how to communicate.
absolutely. So now, how much does all of that play into your characters, or do you have any one character that especially reminds you of that time period of your life?
I think all of my characters have a little bit here and there, little aspects of it, of, you know, of me in them. But there's not one specific character where I can say, hey, this person is me. Not even my protagonist is me. But every single one of my characters has bits and pieces of me and, you know, my strengths and my weaknesses. Like, for example, my protagonist is petrified of heights. Well, so am I. So I can see that. But I do think that the fact that I spent so much time watching people and trying to figure out what their motivations are, what they're thinking, what they're doing, why they're doing the things they do, gave me a little bit more understanding of, you know, like emotions and people in general. But I'm always been very much an out of the box creative thinker too. So
Yes. Well, and talk about life handing you a lemon and making lemonade. You had that situation that you didn't fully understand. You were bullied because of some of that,
yep.
but you took all of that, and here you all are using it to fuel your creativity and, rewriting your first book and working on a fifth book. I mean, how many people can say that about their lives?
Yeah, it's been, well, I can't say that it's been easy, because I went through a very dark period in my life, trying to figure things out. I felt very lonely. I still to this day, struggle, and I analyze every conversation I have. Like, okay, was there anything I missed between those lines? And so there's challenges that I have. But women on the spectrum, because we're a lot more, our brains are a lot more geared towards communication and blending in, and just that's the way our brains are wired. We tend to mask it a lot better, I think. So I've got really good at masking. That's one reason why I observe so much, is so I could figure out, well, what is this mask supposed to look like? And when I say mask, that means hiding who you are and mimicking other people.
Sure.
But then deep inside, I was like, I was never me. So, this was, writing was my way to express all those pent up emotions and confusion and dealing with those questions that I had, because I could live vicariously through my characters. I always used to say it satisfied my God complex.
Sure. Where else can you be in full control? At least to some extent. I mean,
Yeah.
characters do have their life of their own that you've got to be true to. Once you've created them,
They,
you've got to let that go that certain
sometimes
course.
they do, you do have to kind of, rope them back in. But for the most part, I mean, when I get into the zone writing and I let my characters go, sometimes they'll take me places where I'm like, wow, that's great. I didn't think about that. Well, like, obviously I did, but I
Right.
was like, that came out of my head. But then other times I have to like reel them back and say, wait a minute, that's a little scary. Why did that come out of my head? There's something wrong with me. What is wrong with me? Why did I go there?
But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just the flow of things. They've made these certain
Yeah,
choices, and so it's logical that this is the next step in that progression. Whether that was what you
absolutely.
intended or not, it's just this is what's logical.
There's some scenes in each one of my novels where I was just inspired and I just let my characters have free reign and see where they went. Like, they're stuck in situations and I'm like, I really don't know how they're going to get out, because I hadn't planned that far, because I didn't know they were going to get into this situation. And I think, it's in each one of my books. And then as soon as we, start, it's like, oh, I didn't know they were going to do that. Well, that makes perfect sense. Or I didn't know
That's
that was going to
great.
happen. Wow, that's perfect.
Right. When the writing surprises the writer. Oh.
I'm just honestly, a lot of the times I'm along for the ride.
Hmm. But that's a fun place to be. That's a
It
fun way
is. It is.
to handle it. So, do you ever like when you're looking at news stories or just things going on in the world? Do those ever find a way to creep into your books?
Yes. There's, like life lessons and stuff that I've learned that I do weave into my novels, just like common things that, well, there's no such thing as common sense, but things that I've learned along the way that, I will weave that in there. Like, it's not a, it's like, I don't want to hit people over the head with a wholesome message and all, but, I'll weave it in there so that it's applicable to the adventure that's going on, but it's also a stop and think, like, huh, I hadn't thought of that, so um, I try to do those kind of things. As far as like current events, it's kind of hard to weave in our current events into a magical medieval realm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more about when he was on this side of the veil and you
Yeah, he
know.
didn't spend. We see him more on our side of the veil as the
Mhm.
book gets later on, like into the
Okay.
series, but he's spending a lot more time across the veil. He has made a couple trips here, but he's not yet had his adventure here on this side yet. So, but
Oh,
I haven't excluded that. It's just, it's more from his perspective. And
sure.
my protagonist, like, what is he going to see? Is he going to watch the news? Is he going to interact with a lot of people? Is he going to travel far? So I got to keep it within his realm.
Sure thing. So how do you go about with this world building, this other realm? I mean, what's your inspiration for that?
Merlin, definitely, like Merlin and King Arthur and the Arthurian tales. I've always kind of associated magic with medieval times, and they don't have technology because they don't need it. We're the ones that need it because we don't have magic. But I kind of envisioned that world, and then it just sort of grew from there. So, but a lot of times I just have an image in my head, and I just write down what I see.
So when we first spoke, you said you've been writing for 35 years. At what point in that 35 years did you first start conceptualizing this character or this realm or this even the idea for this series?
Oh, I started writing this first book in, I think, probably 20 2018 or something. Beginning of 2019, at least I know I was writing it then, but I was diagnosed in September of 2019 and I had finished it. And so that's when I sent that book off because I thought, well, maybe this is my special interest writing. And I sent that book off. So it would have been 2019 that I started it and I finished it that same year. Yeah.
Okay. So is that also when you first started like thinking about these characters? That's really what I'm asking is like where did
Yes.
the ideas stem from?
Oh, yeah, no, the ideas stem from like again the Merlin and what was Merlin like before he became Merlin, famous Merlin the magician? What would he be like if he was a young man in our times? I didn't set out to write, I didn't plan to write a male protagonist. He just sort of the character developed for the role. I know people ask me why, but I jokingly say it's because if my character's traipsing through the woods for weeks on end, I don't have to worry about menstrual cycles. But in all honesty, it's just that's the character that developed for the role.
Yeah, absolutely. Though there's something to be said for that first response because yeah, men simpler, easier. Enough said.
Yeah, there's no, drugstore around the corner that you can go and get some, what you
Mm,
need. But
right.
yeah, that's what I jokingly say. But I do have female characters in my books, and we will see them more as we go. But we have to start somewhere, and we start out with my character just being very lonely, trying to figure out who they are and why they have these abilities, and then they end up, attracting the notice of these very powerful figures that are out to, axe him. One wants to just outright end him, and the other one wants to steal his powers. So he kind of
Okay.
gets dragged into this realm. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then once he learns about this, it kind of feels like, well, here I don't have to hide my powers, but I'm a human in the magical realm, so I still don't belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So I guess what I'm trying to get to is, were
Yeah.
you always a big fan of like Merlin, those types of works growing up? Is that what you liked to read, or you know,
I
how did
yes, I
you kind
liked
of come to
the
that?
I really like fantasy because it gives you that freedom to cross genres. I didn't read a lot as a kid because I had a hard time finding books that I wanted to read. But the things that I did read were like Dean Koontz. Read almost every single R.L. Stine book there was at the time. I mean, he's probably got some more books out now. Um, but I loved that idea of the unlikely hero. And a lot of superheroes start out as unlikely hero, and if you think about it,
True.
magic is just like a superpower. So it just naturally materialized as an idea. You write this character who would just rather be a normal person, and but they can't because they have these special abilities which they must have a purpose for, and but they set him apart from everybody else, and he's just trying to figure out, well, what's the purpose of them, and at the same time trying to ignore them. Maybe if I ignore them they'll go away, but I can't because I must have a purpose. It's a moral dilemma as well.
Yeah. Which makes me wonder when you imagine Callum. His name's Callum.
Callum, yeah.
Okay. How old is Callum when you visualize him?
He starts out in my first book 22, and that's what I envisioned him as. I think in
Okay.
the third book, it's the third book that he turns 23, and that's when we actually find out his exact age. Otherwise it's just early 20s, but he was 22 in the first two books.
Which makes me wonder when you finish your series if you might have a prequel like when he's a teenager, when he's in the awkward teenage area. These are interesting ideas.
Yeah, I haven't eliminated that. There's other characters that show up through my series that I would love to go back and do backstories on.
Yeah.
Um, there's a character shows up in the third book who becomes very important and almost a secondary main character from the series going forward. And he's got an interesting backstory that I would love to explore as well.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Yeah. I would love to be on the fly, a fly on the wall when you're working on those. You'll have to just come back, when you get through books 5, 6, 9, and so on. And if you decide to
Yes.
do a prequel, I want to know, just because I
Yeah,
want to see what you
absolutely.
decide to do with it.
Well, I'm looking at other projects, and I have started. I've had to put it aside just because I have so many things going on right now. But I'm working on this dystopian. It's kind of like a Robin Hood meets Romeo and Juliet with hints of Hunger Games.
I
But
like
I
the
do
way
intend.
that sounds.
Yes, and I'm fully intending to write that one. It's just that I've got too many things on my plate. So I have
No.
to set something aside, but I'm still thinking about it, and I'm working on other ideas that keep rattling around in my brain. If I didn't write, I would never sleep.
I get you. I get you. That's the thing. I mean, we all have our different writing styles. I like to work on multiple projects at a time because it gives my mind time to rest from one project,
Hmm.
but it's still there in the back of my mind, kind of a thing. But then, you've got that, plus you have a family to take care of. Um,
Yes.
for me, it's just, me and the animals. So,
Well, they
not
still
quite
need
as
lovin's.
labor intensive.
Yeah, I've
but
got but my boys are in school during the day, so I find that that's when I do a lot of my best writing, is when the house is quiet and my kids are in school and the chores are done, and I sit down with my computer and my coffee, and my dog is cuddled on the couch beside me giving me stink eye because I'm not petting her.
yes, they'll do
I'm
that.
typing away. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I know that I also have to think about like sharing my stories too. So I have to figure out, how to tell the world that I exist and that my stories are out there. So that's another aspect that I'm also looking at. It's just um, too many strings and ropes pulling me in every different direction. So I write because that's my self care.
Absolutely. Well, I remember you making a comment, and I have it here in my notes from when we spoke back in July. You literally said, "Writing saved me." I have that in
Mm-hmm.
quotation marks.
It did.
Yeah. I have a note about you how you would pour your emotions into this hobby. Something about from hobby to passion is what I have written down,
Yes.
but but
Yeah.
but yes, I mean that was
I
a very strong comment that you made.
absolutely. Yeah. I know it was around that awkward, you're heading into teenager years where friends are important, popularity is a big thing. I was obviously very awkward, very introverted, and for whatever reason, very bullied. And try as I might, I couldn't blend into the walls. So I was going through a really dark time in my life, and writing allowed me to work through my frustrations, my angers, my confusion by, putting my characters through hell. So, yeah. And then seeing them come out the other side.
Absolutely. You know, as rough as that sounds, I'm sure that really played into making you the great writer that you are. Part of me envies you that. You know, I was not popular by any stretch. I was kind of content to blend in with the crowd and be an observer. And I would write, but I wrote, just what I was basically told to write.
Yeah.
I didn't really write for my own benefit or as some kind of, coping mechanism. Part of me wishes I had, because how much further along would I be in the writing aspect at this stage in life? Most of my writing was not creative, it was more business stuff. And certainly, people would come to me because they knew I could put out something that they wanted to have written in a way that they
Yeah.
were not able to do. I still get that at work. Hey, this is what I want to say. You just write that up. Okay. But I didn't get to do the creative side until last year when I finally allowed myself to do the creative side.
It's very liberating, isn't it?
It is the
Because you
most
can do
wonderful thing.
anything. Yeah.
Yes.
You
And
can
you can,
be anyone.
yeah, or at any point in time, future or
Yes.
past.
Yeah. Or both. You know?
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
It's like kids playing dress up. And, I've always had that wild imagination, and I've always done the what if thinking, like, what if the sun blinked out today? How would our lives change? How would we survive? What would happen to our money, our food, our, you know, what would happen when the power went out and then we were plunged into pitch darkness, or in our planet's flying through space like an ice ball out of, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I think about all the times my sister would say, "Oh, you're so dramatic." And I would take offense to that, and then I would become dramatic, ironically.
Mhm.
But looking back and going, you know, I'm actually okay with that. Sure, dramatic is good because dramatic plays into a good story. So yes, I am
Absolutely.
dramatic.
Yes. Be proud of it. I'm a geek. I'm a science and math geek. And I mean, once I was diagnosed with autism and I started looking back through my life, I could see all the signs. All the signs were there. And I totally understood, why I thought the way I did, why I did things the way I did. But I wouldn't change my brain. Like I was I thought, but I also thought everybody at 11 years old. I built a working seismograph and buried it in my backyard. I made a sundial in permanent marker on my windowsill. I got grounded for that one. But,
Oh, but
I
how
did these
cool that you did
things.
that, though.
Yeah. And I mean, like, because I didn't talk to other people, I thought everybody did that. Apparently, not everybody does that. There were things that were stressful too, though. Things like I had to count my steps all the time. I had to have things in even number pairs. And if they were odd numbers, I don't have an affinity for odd numbers. I still to this day will go out for walks and I'll add up all the numbers on license plates until I get a single digit. But it's those things that I guess there's always cons to everything. And they're stressful, but I wouldn't change anything because it is who I am and it's made me who I am. And I see the world in a certain way and can't imagine seeing it any other way.
That's very cool. I have to comment on this because I'm sitting here going, okay, she does not have an affinity for odd numbers, but you're projecting 9 books. How does that fly?
Because 9 can be divisible by 3.
So there's an exception to this odd rule.
There is. Just like 5s and 10s, right?
Okay,
If you can
okay.
divide it, I don't like 5, but 10s I do. So you can divide the 10 in half. And it's just it has to be broken into even pairs.
Yeah. Well, and if
It's
we all have,
and
things
that's
that
just
work
how my
for
brain
us.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But I was curious after that statement. I'm like, okay, but how do we get to 9? How does that happen?
So it's either got to be 6 or it's got to be 9. And I know the sixth book does not reach the end. So it's got to be, 8. 8 doesn't feel right. 9 does.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if by chance you find out that 9 isn't enough, 10 is still okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't know.
For a half a second, I thought, well, maybe I said something wrong there. Maybe that's not okay.
No, that's okay. That's absolutely, yeah, that's all right. I mean, I'm keep coming up with ideas, but I'm gonna have to stop that at some point because I could write forever in this, and I just think people, I don't want to get burned out on this series, or have to put it away and then have my fans sitting there. Why are you not writing more books? Because there's people that are asking me, when is my 5th book coming out? So, I promised that I would end this series. I would write it all the way to the end, and I will. But I also want to do other projects too.
Well, absolutely right. Yeah. So I had spoken to someone very early in the early days of when my podcast was launched, and she has a book series. I think it's like the Bluebell Chronicles or something like that. It's set in Scotland. But she had made a comment about how she had intended her series to end. And she wrote it in such a way that, the character was supposed to die and did die as far as she was concerned. But her audience saw something that she didn't catch, and there was room for another book because there was a way that he could still live through that situation. So she did end up writing
Interesting.
one more book. So I just had to go there with you on, well, what about? So,
Yeah, well, I mean, even when it's done, it's not done, right?
right,
If
exactly. There's
there's something,
potential.
if I might want to revisit it. I was not I'm not opposed to the idea of writing a parallel series of something else where we meet characters from my current series. And I know
I
other people
think
have
that could
done
be
that.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah, that could be very cool.
yeah. I wish we were allowed to do that without it being a copyright infringement. There are so many potential stories. Um, People have heard me say this before about Gone with the Wind and Scarlet and all that. I just think, how cool would it be in the book Scarlet? She and Rhett had a daughter who did live, who grew up, and but there's no writing about that daughter. And I keep thinking, man,
Yeah.
that would be such a potential for a cool series. A daughter raised by Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara. What would her life be? But
Yeah.
copyright.
Yeah.
So what do you
Yeah.
do?
I mean, that might, depending on the genre of things. I know there's a whole fan fiction or, realm, but there's rules there too.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
Going into the whole nerd sciencey stuff, I used to really love this TV series Roswell. Was it Roswell? Yes, it was
Yes.
Roswell.
Yeah. There was
Not
another one,
not the
Eureka, as well.
and I never watched that one. Um,
Okay, but I
but
do
I
remember
like,
Roswell. Yep.
yeah, from 2003, not the one that's currently on television right now.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I had stumbled onto some fan fiction, people who had wanted the series to keep on going on, so much so that they kept sending Tabasco sauce to the producers. That was their way of supporting it. Saying, "Hey, come on, keep the episodes." But I was really surprised at that time to find that there was fan fiction where the story continued. That was
Yeah.
the first time I'd ever even become aware of the idea of fan fiction. But I think it's because I so much enjoyed that series that I was tempted even to write my own version of another, tangent on that story. But
There is nothing stopping you from doing that of your own accord on your own as long as you don't share it with anybody else.
yeah,
I'm
that
sure
ship
there's
sailed a
authors out there
long
that have
time
done that.
ago. No, that one's got to live in my head, but I'm happy to write my own stories at this point. But back then, that probably would have been the first time I would have considered like diving into the writing world, for the pure joy of it.
Yes.
That was what? Oh, that's at 20 years ago? More than 20 years ago, I guess.
Yeah,
Because it was on
23 years ago
2003.
now.
Yeah, yikes.
Yeah, the years are going
Crazy.
by way too fast.
Much too fast.
My
What can
grandpa
you
used to
do,
have a
though?
saying that life is like a roll of toilet paper. When you start out, it looks like you got a lot, and as you get to the end, it gets runs out a lot faster and faster until you're all of a sudden done.
I've never heard that, but I think that's very true. Sometimes it even comes to an end in a very surprising way.
Yeah, and then you're
So
like, "Oh no, I thought I had more."
I'm in deep trouble. Yes. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. So as we get toward the end of our episode, it's funny because you had were trying to remember the last random question you had left behind. And when you said what you said about it, I was like, oh, that was very similar to the question that the person right before your episode left for you. It's not
Yeah,
exactly the same question, but it's
similar.
you'll recognize it's like in that same thought process. So the question my previous guest asked is, if you had to choose, what other period of history would you like to live in?
Oh, yeah, I would say probably medieval times. Although I don't know if I'd want to be a woman in medieval times. I think they had the raw end of the deal there, but yeah,
True.
medieval times, I think. It was simpler, the air was fresher.
True that. Very true
Yeah.
that. What is it that you liked about the medieval times? Like, what would be appealing if you were going to try to sell me and say, "Hey, Zoe, let's go back and let's live there"? How would you sell me on that?
There was a lot of nature. We weren't so distracted and by technology, and we could actually like stop and smell the flowers. There was so many things that we had yet to discover, and you know it's just a simpler time. People lived off the land and they worked hard, and I mean, not everybody did, obviously, but there was a lot more nature involved and connection with the land and community, having to rely on your neighbors instead of isolating ourselves in little homes all by ourselves.
I guess that's true. And when you think about entertainment, it was very community based. It was, sharing stories with each
Yes.
other, singing in a group, or
Yep.
painting, or things like that. Yeah, that could be
Yes.
very interesting to at least travel back. I don't know that I would want to live there, but I would travel. I would go
Yeah, yeah.
for a vacation.
I would love to go back and meet William Shakespeare and pick his brain, because I'm sure because he seemed very philosophical as well as artistic. So I bet he had some ideas rattling around in his brain.
Absolutely. I would imagine you would probably have really enjoyed some time with Leonardo da Vinci as well,
Yes,
given
yes.
the
Yeah, I
science
thought you were going to say
side of
Leonardo
things.
DiCaprio for a minute there, and it's like, not so much. Well, I don't know. I have nothing against him, just don't know him. But yeah, Leonardo da Vinci, definitely. He seems he would be in that time period, and he was a very inventive, imaginative person as well.
That's exactly what
Not
I think
saying
he would
Leonardo
feel.
DiCaprio is not. You know, like I said, I don't
I
know him.
couldn't say one way or the other about DiCaprio. I've enjoyed some of his films, but that's about all I can say about him.
Likewise, yeah.
Da Vinci, Da Vinci would be interesting because of, I mean, how a
Yes.
deep thinker he had to have been, the things he came up with that we still look
Yeah.
at today.
Yes.
That's
And
pretty
Michelangelo as
amazing.
well. He was very creative minded as well.
True, true. Yeah, yeah. You could definitely have some enjoyment if you were able to rub shoulders with ones like that.
I'll just have to get busy building my TARDIS so that I can travel back in time.
I was thinking about that when I was having this conversation with my previous guest, because in that conversation, my only objection was, I would only want to go far back enough that I would still have use of indoor plumbing. And I thought, well, I wouldn't have worry about that if I had a TARDIS, because it would naturally
Yeah.
good plumbing. At least in my
Yeah.
my
And it's easy to
TARDIS. I don't know
hide
about
because
the
it's pretty small.
exactly. But man, that could be an interesting question of itself. If you were going to have your own TARDIS, how would you design yours? What would be included? Kind of like a model of a
Definitely
car,
a jacuzzi tub somewhere in there.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah.
Definitely like that. Oh, and maybe a good kitchen. Some of the nice
Yes.
features we
Yeah.
have, so that when I got tired of the regular types of foods that were there in the middle age time period, that if I wanted something like, oh, I don't know, an Italian beef sandwich or pizza or whatever,
There you go.
I can
You know
step
what?
into
Just
my
skip the
TARDIS
kitchen
and
and just put a
whip up what I
restaurant in
want.
there.
Wouldn't that be
Don't forget the
something?
theater.
Hmm. Absolutely. In the karaoke bar.
Yes. Yes. And maybe like a wormhole portal for your Amazon delivery people.
We could have some fun with this.
I feel a story coming on.
Me too. I'm just trying, like, what would I title this story? Like, something
I don't know.
sciencey,
Back
the
to no. Back to the
TARDIS.
Future's already taken.
Yes. But yeah, like the TARDIS paradox or something. I don't know. Something out there.
Something like that.
Yes, but then we'd probably have the copyright infringement because TARDIS, it's already a thing with Doctor
Yes.
Who, and
Oh yeah.
all these pesky laws that get in the way of creativity.
Yep.
So, have you had a chance to think about a question you'd like to leave for the next
I
guest?
have.
Okay, I'm ready
Yes, and
for it.
it's a little bit off topic, but it gives an idea of a person's mentality and personality and what kind of things they enjoy. My question is, are you a Star Trek or a Star Wars fan, and why?
I like it, especially since I am very solidly on the Star Trek side of things.
Likewise. I mean, Star Wars has its place. It's the whole unlikely hero, rebels rising, fighting the bad, good against bad fight. But there's something about the political systems, and then you get to learn about the traditions and the cultures of all these interconnected species of beings.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and to be fair, I've watched both, and I will watch both. I will watch
Yeah.
Star Wars as much as I will Star Trek. I will read Star Trek. I will not read Star Wars. I draw the line there. but
I
but I
haven't read
definitely
either.
prefer
I've only
Star Trek.
watched.
Oh, the
Yeah.
books are
Yeah.
actually pretty good. Yeah, you and I may have another conversation about that another time. But yeah, the books are definitely worthwhile on the Star Trek side of things, and maybe they are on the Star Wars side of things. But again, I draw the line. I'm not even gonna bother.
Yeah, I think there might be more Star Wars books written than Star Trek books,
Mm,
because there's a whole childhood genre of young readers reading Star Wars stuff too, and there's not too many Star Treks in that age group. So
perhaps so.
yeah,
I feel like there's still a pretty healthy collection of Star Trek books, though.
and there's
That being
yeah
said,
there's nothing wrong with that. You know what? I always enjoyed reading the books because I could imagine them and I didn't have to pay, nobody had to pay for those special effects, because you can imagine great things in your head if the author's a good writer and they can describe things well
right.
enough and you're not confused going, wait, they were turned this way, but then they're yelling that way, or I don't know.
True. Well, and sometimes you need a book to help you get into a series. When Star Trek
Yes.
Voyager came out, like the first couple episodes, I was not really interested. I was
Hmm.
semi bored by it, even.
Yes.
But I liked Star Trek as a whole,
Hmm.
and so I
Yeah, the
decided I
concept of
would read
venturing.
the first episode or two in the book series, and that made
Yes.
the difference for me because then you've got some
Ah,
backstory, you understand more about the character and behind the scenes. I wanted to like it because I always liked Kate Mulgrew. I always thought she was a great actress. I
yes.
loved watching her as a kid, and like she was like Mrs. Columbo and other things. But I was determined I wanted to like Voyager because she was in it,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so reading the book helped me to go, okay, now I can embrace this.
I think my favorite of all the series is the DS9 series. And
DS9
it
is
was
pretty
weird because they're
cool.
not actually exploring. It's more of the people coming to them, but there was still
Mm-hmm.
enough things going on. And then when they discovered the wormhole, they could go explore in groups and stuff like that. But it was just there was still it was a different type of a different type of mood to that one, and it
Very
appealed.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was the I don't know if wisdom's the word I really want, but the appeal of Star Trek is they knew how to switch things up to keep the audience interested.
Yes.
They went from exploration in a spaceship to DS9 to the space station, still bringing some
Yes.
interesting, and then they switched it up to now we've got this woman out here on the far distant frontier unexplored.
Yes.
And then of course you
Yeah.
had Scott Bakula with the whole early days. Me there, but
Yep.
because that was purely about the
Yeah.
theme song, I just had issues with that stupid theme song for that show. I had to,
I
thank
I
goodness Netflix
watched.
allowed.
Yeah. I was around to watch the I get I yeah, I was able to watch it. Was the pilot for the first Star Trek with Pike, Captain
Uh-huh.
Pike.
Yes, Christopher
Yeah,
Pike. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or was it Captain? Was it Christopher Pike? Okay, I
Christopher
was like,
Pike.
was it
Yeah.
was the character's name Mr. Pike?
Yeah, it was
Was the
Christopher
character's
Pike.
name Pike or the captain? I can't remember, but I just
Yes,
remember
it was the
I remember
captain.
him sitting in that chair, and it was like I don't know if that was in that episode or it was later on when he appeared, and he had like the little sauna chair, and I was sitting there, I was like, I've seen pictures of people doing the saunas and those things, and I guess he's just detoxing.
You missed the episode where he lost the ability to walk and all of that. Then I take it.
Yes, yeah, I did that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. See, now this
because
is
it went
another
straight
case
into
with
William
books.
Shatner after that. Yeah,
Oh, well, right, exactly. See, I never saw that first episode where it was Pike and Spock.
yeah, yeah,
I guess I've never looked into it either. Reading the books, though, gave me a lot of history about Pike and what could have happened. And then, of course, now
yeah,
the modern, the movies brought Pike back in, which was cool. But
yeah,
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 so there's a
yeah.
lot of interesting stuff that they did with that. You and I could spend a whole hour talking about Star Trek, and
Yeah,
I think we
absolutely.
would both be
And
entertained.
yeah, and see, it's a question that just sort of draws out your interests, and because you got to explain why you like those, and it's you can see the person's motivations and their, in what piques their interest. So it's kind of cool.
Absolutely, yeah, I could totally get on board with that. Well,
So
Jennifer,
that's
it's
what that
been
was my.
fun. No, I think it's
Yes,
great. Do you,
absolutely.
do you have anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we close
If
today?
they're if people are interested in finding me, best place to start is my website at www.jmshawauthor.com. You can find my links to Instagram, Facebook, Goodreads. There's my books are all listed there, and there's links to them online. And when my relaunch happens, it'll show up there, and there'll be links to find it on Amazon as a print or a Kindle. So it'll show up. It'll show up on my website with those links first before it shows up anywhere else.
Excellent. All right. Well, we're so glad you came back to share this with us, and we're looking
Yeah,
forward to seeing the second edition of your very first book in this series. And I'm sure you and I'll probably be talking when book number 5 comes along, because your publicist
absolutely.
is really good about keeping you on tap
Yeah.
and making sure we get to have these conversations. And who knows what kind of craziness
Yeah.
you and I will get into next time.
Oh goodness. So maybe there's a good storyline there.
Maybe so. It could be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. We're gonna stop the episode, but everyone, thank you for joining us, and please be sure to share, check out her Jennifer's website, and do you have a Facebook page as well? I think you
I
mentioned
do.
you
Yeah.
have
The
some
links to
social
my
media.
Facebook and my Instagram are all in the bottom of my website.
Well, there you go. You heard it from Jennifer firsthand, so check out her pages as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.